Are you tired of struggling with oxidizer monitoring in challenging waters? Introducing Pyxis Labs OxyPanel Plus, the revolutionary solution for water treatment professionals. This non-wet chemistry amperometric multi-parameter sensor measures oxidizer, pH, ORP, and temperature all in one platform. Say goodbye to reagents and constant maintenance. With automated flow control and a touchscreen display, OxyPanel Plus is the future of oxidizer monitoring. Water professionals deserve better tools, and Pyxis Lab delivers. Go to scalinguph2o.com/Pyxis. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/PYXIS. Pyxis, because water professionals deserve better. Stay ahead of corrosion with our expert analysis. Don't let corrosion catch you off guard. Our corrosion coupon analysis offers precise data to help you take proactive measures. Don't just send your corrosion coupons to any lab. Send your corrosion coupons to a lab that understands your water treatment needs. B Labs is run by water treaters for water treaters. At B Labs, every corrosion coupon report includes a picture of your corrosion coupon before and after cleaning, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. To find out more, go to scalinguph2o.com/B Labs and up your corrosion coupon game. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/BELABS. B Labs, corrosion coupon reports done right. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, I love it when people in the Scaling Up Nation talk about previous episodes. And I've heard several people talk about Ben's warning or request to the Scaling Up Nation to put a smoke detector in your garage. And Ben, of course, said if he got earlier notice, that might have been a different outcome for his house. By the way, if you have not listened to last week's episode, our guest, Ben Frieders, had a house fire, a devastating house fire. And I was just so impressed with how he handled that, while how he helped his family deal with that. It was just the model of how to work through crisis. Ben did a fantastic job with that. He talked about that on last week's episode. But several of you have written in and said you're not supposed to put smoke detectors in a garage because they could cause false alarms with exhaust. And apparently the recommendation is to put a heat detector in the garage, and that won't put off a lot of nuisance alarms. Well, and then some other people said that it gets too cold in a garage for some of the heat detectors to work. And then others said that makes it work better. So Nation, I'm going to tell you, I don't know, but I love it that you're talking about this. And I have to tell you, right after that interview, I went to Costco, one of my favorite places to go to Costco. There are so many things that I had no clue that I needed, but I definitely needed them once I saw them at Costco. Well, anyway, I was buying one of those big totes to put some things in for the live event that we have each year for the Rising Tide Mastermind. And right beside it was a 2-pack of smoke alarms. Well, I figured, hey, Ben just said something about this. I have not put one in my garage. He just talked about it. You know what? I'm going to put one in there. So they had an instant rebate. I have an extra one, and I put one, because it was a 2-pack, and I put one up on the roof. Now, we have a very, very high garage, so I don't know if maybe that's why we're not having any issues, but we haven't had any issues. And of course, I haven't had anything happen to test it. And it is not networked to the rest of the house. So all the other detectors in our house are wired to each other. So if one goes off, they all go off. Well, the garage wasn't wired that way. So if it goes off, it's the only one that goes off. And that is actually under our master bathroom. So it's my hope at night, if that goes off, that we would hear it in our bedroom. But it's better than nothing, and we haven't had any false alarms. But again, I love that you are talking about this. Whenever we can create awareness around something on the Scaling Up H2O podcast, I think it's great. I hate that Ben had to experience what he had to go through, but he shared it with all of you. And now maybe you can learn something that he got out of that experience so we don't have to go through that experience. So once again, Ben, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with the Scaling Up Nation. And we have so many amazing guests on this podcast. You guys have to suffer through my introductions before we get to the interviews. And that's why you are here. And that's okay, because we have some amazing guests. I have learned so much from interviewing the amazing guests that we've had on this podcast throughout the years. So thank you if you were a guest on this podcast, and maybe you want to be a guest on this podcast, or you know somebody who should be a guest on this podcast. Well, go to scalinguph2o.com, go over to our show ideas page. Let us know who that person is. Even if it is you, I'd love to meet you. I'd love to talk with you, or whomever your guest recommendation is. Let us know what you think the topic is that that guest would want to speak on, why you think they would be a good guest, and we will reach out to them, and maybe you will hear them on an upcoming episode. It is amazing, all of the people that I have met through this podcast. We have well over 50 guests each and every year, and I've been doing this for over 8 years, so wow, that is a lot of people that I have met over the years. That is a lot of content that we've been able to collect over the years. And I mentioned this on last week's episode. I'll mention it again. There's just a wealth of information on our webpage because of all these guests that you guys are introducing us to. So the next time you need to learn something about industrial water treatment, one of the places you might want to go is scalinguph2o.com and put in some searches there. It is amazing, all of the data, all of the resources that we have collected over the years. And of course, somebody that helps us with content each and every week, he's our friend. He's James McDonald. And here is a brand new What Do You Know?
Hello and welcome to What Do You Know? The game show where we find out what do you know about industrial water treatment, drop by drop. So pump up your brain, take out that test kit of knowledge, and prepare to answer this week's question on What Do You Know? Today's question is, what field test is used to measure how likely a water source is to foul reverse osmosis membranes due to suspended solids? It is a silt density index, or SDI test. It measures the rate at which a filter is plugged by water under constant pressure. The lower the SDI, the less fouling the water is expected to be to an RO membrane. A common goal is an SDI less than 3, with a value between 3 to 5, requiring more frequent cleaning. Beyond this, upstream filtration to remove submicron particles is typically required. Membrane manufacturers and system designers may have slightly different SDI ranges. I'm James McDonald, and thanks for playing along with us. Stay tuned for next week's episode of What Do You Know?
Well, thank you, James. That's a fun way for us to make sure we are staying up to date on our water treatment knowledge. And another fun way is to network with your fellow water treaters at a conference. So here are a few conferences that maybe you want to put on your calendar. The 2025 ASHRAE Annual Conference. And of course, ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. They're having their conference June 21st through 25th in Phoenix, Arizona. Lots of great things come from ASHRAE. And of course, we have ASHRAE 188, and there are also a lot of other documents and guidelines that they have that do touch the industrial water treatment industry. So we're going to have information about that conference by going to scalinguph2o.com/events. And while you're there, you'll see the American Society for Healthcare Engineering is having their conference in Columbus, Ohio, July 27th through 30th. And if you have hospitals or other medical facilities in your customer portfolio, this might be something that you want to check out because they are making decisions that do affect how you will perform water treatment services at those facilities. And it's great for them to have people on their committees like you that know the industrial water treatment industry. So we're going to have all of that information for you on that events page. Also, the 2025 Industrial Water Conference, hosted by the Water Reuse Association in conjunction with the Water Environment Federation, is having their conference in Columbus, Ohio, June 23rd through 25th. And finally, taking place in Flagstaff, Arizona, and put on by the Arizona Water Association and the Water Reuse Federation of Arizona. That is taking place July 20th through 22nd. All that information and more simply by going to scalinguph2o.com/events. And while you're there, if you see something, or rather you don't see something you were expecting to see, let us know what that is. Go over to our show ideas page. Let us know about the conference that we don't know about, and we will get that added to our event section. It is my goal, it is my staff's goal to make our website such an easy one-stop place for you to go to learn anything about the industrial water treatment community so you can enjoy your day-to-day more, so you can service your clients better, so you can find new information easier. And you always know you can go to scalinguph2o.com/events, and you are going to see everything there is in the industrial water treatment community. Well, Nation, one of the reasons, as I mentioned, that I love this podcast is all of the guests that we get to introduce here on the podcast. We have a returning guest coming back, and here is that interview. My lab partner today is returning guest Garret Garcia of Masters Company. Gary, welcome back to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thank you, Trace. It's great to be here.
This is time number 3 for you being on the podcast.
Yes, sir. That's true. Thank you again.
So looking back, you were on episode 206, where we were talking about blends and all types of things around that. And then you were back on episode 314 when we were trying to figure out what's going to happen to the water treatment economy. How are we going to get products? And I got to say, Gary, you've got a pretty good crystal ball.
Well, I don't know if I have a good crystal ball or not. I just got lucky. That's it. And not necessarily lucky in a good way. You know, the supply chain issues and the costs that resulted from that were pretty upsetting to the world.
Well, if somebody hasn't listened to 206 or 314, do you mind reintroducing yourself to the Scaling Up Nation?
Okay. I'm Garret Garcia. I work for Masters Company. I am currently the vice president. We are a business unit of MFG Chemicals out of Chattanooga and a proud member of that family.
Gary, I'm trying to remember. You and I became good friends. We knew each other, but we became good friends. You offered me a car ride to the airport. We were at an AWT function, and you said, "Hey, I'm going that way. Don't get a taxi. Go with me." We had a great car ride. Was that like 2005 or something?
Trace, I don't remember the year, but it's been a long time ago, my friend. So, you know, neither one of us is getting any younger, but
you didn't have to say that.
It's been a while, but it's great. Thank you again.
Well, I want to thank you for offering that car ride. It was amazing. We had some great conversation that started a great friendship. You not only offered me the car ride, I had an earlier flight than you, and you actually dropped me off at the door and then went to go return the car. That was amazing. Thank you for that.
Well, again, I don't know about amazing. I will say this. It's been my experience at several AWT or leadership meetings where the ride to the airport afterwards has been quite eventful. I'm happy that it worked out for you. A couple of other times, we literally made it to the gate 5 seconds before a couple of people were running across the airport to catch their planes.
Gary, you recently came off of the board of directors. We have thousands of people that listen to this podcast, and I've been a former president of the Association of Water Technologies, probably my favorite trade organization. What do you want to say to listeners? Because let's face it, the AWT and every organization like that, they do not function without volunteers. How do we get people some correct information so maybe they can start considering volunteering? And why should they consider it?
Well, first of all, I would say for those people who are not involved, don't be intimidated by it. There's no fear there. There's no huge expectations on people. I think when you start volunteering and participating, you will meet a great group of people. They turn into friends and acquaintances that you cherish. The give back to the industry is, for me, key. I've been blessed throughout my career. And so my viewpoint is I want to give back, and I think people should share that and do as much as they can. Because you're participating, if you have time, you can participate more. If you don't have that much time, you participate a little bit less. But the participation is key, and it helps their careers, helps them grow, and helps the water treatment community.
And I can say without a doubt, I've put a lot of work into the Association of Water Technologies. When I look at the friendships and all of the things that I've gotten out of it, it was tenfold what I put in.
I would agree 1,000%. For every ounce of effort you put in, you get 10, 20 ounces back in return. I think it's great. I encourage everyone to get involved.
And I think of all the questions that I've called you with that you've helped me with answers over the years, had it not been for my decision to be involved, I wouldn't have known you.
That's true. And the more that you're actually, I hate to use the overworked term, networking, but creating those friendships and acquaintances, you lower the bar, you gain more information, you gain more expertise. No one person has it all. I, again, encourage it. Have the dialogue, participate.
Now, I can't remember exactly what we talked about in that car ride to the airport so many years ago, but I'm willing to bet around that same time, PTSA was a brand name and only one company really had access to it. And later, not too long later, it became available. And now everybody is using PTSA to try to figure out how much product they have in the system. Well, now we've evolved to not only knowing how much product we have in the system, but how much polymer we have in the system because we're tagging polymers now. And that's what our focus of today's interview is going to be about. So maybe we start there. What are the differences and similarities between PTSA and tag polymer?
So PTSA and the tag polymer are both utilizing fluorophores. Okay. In the case of the PTSA, it is a foreign tracer that you put into the blend. It's not allied to really anything. It's just telling you that you have a presence, if you will. When you use PTSA, you could literally compromise all of the anionic polymers that you have, and the PTSA will still be telling you something. In the case of the fluorescent tag polymer, the fluorophore, well known, well used, is actually double bonded to the backbone of the polymer. So if you lose the fluorophore, if you lose the polymer, you lose it all. So it's a direct measurement of what you're applying. It's not just a third party that you put into the blend. You're actually testing for the active ingredient.
So can PTSA and the tag polymer be used together, or is it one or the other?
No, they can be used together. Some companies choose to do it that way. In my humble opinion, I think what you'll see is over the next couple of years, the PTSA fade and more people utilizing the fluorescent tag polymer because that's literally the backbone of your treatment. So why would I really take any substantive value out of just the PTSA? I want to know how much active polymer I have present.
Now, we all have meters that read the fluorescence when we're testing for PTSA. Is it the same meter that we're using, or is there a special meter involved?
No, it's not the same meter. I will say that likely in the future, manufacturers and meters will come up with, in essence, a universal meter. Now, there are a couple of meters that are a little bit more adaptive. So, one that we have measures PTSA, measures fluorescein, and with just a little bit of calibration work, you can get it to measure active fluorescent tag polymer. So unlike the probes and where they're singular in that, you can actually have a handheld meter that does it all.
If you could give us an example where if we're measuring both PTSA and the amount of polymer that's in the system, that's advantageous for us knowing what's going on.
So again, when you're measuring just the PTSA, you're just measuring whatever gross went into it. And you can lose the activity of the polymer either because it's absorbed onto iron oxides or it's been compromised with cationic quartz, whatever that may be, and you'll still get a PTSA number. When you lose the fluorophore and the actual polymer, you lose them both. So you're actually, when you're measuring for the fluorescent tag polymer, you're actually measuring for the active ingredient instead of just a third party that you put in that was convenient at one time.
So, in your example, if we had an iron infiltration in the system, we would have the same PTSA level even without that iron. But now that all that polymer is going to work on the iron, we start seeing a drop in that fluorescent tag polymer.
That's correct. You wouldn't know with PTSA that you have a large polymer demand. You would not know with PTSA if someone put in some cationic biocide. You would not know if there were other subtle changes in demand on the polymer, just measuring PTSA.
Now, you mentioned a chaotically charged biocide. What are some other things that will interfere with our readings when it comes to tag polymers?
We haven't seen a lot of items that have been an interfering agent. What we've seen is people assuming that a demand is X when it's actually Y. So I can't say that I've got a full dictionary on the interferences because we don't. But we have seen that it's very resilient. We haven't seen really anything that's been problematic.
Are the same issues that you would have with PTSA and interferences there going to be the same with fluorescent polymers?
They'd be similar. There wouldn't be a lot of diversity with that. If you had extreme levels of halogen present, if you had extreme levels of something else, that would be a problem. Something, for example, there are a couple of the biocides, TTPC, for example, will negate PTSA almost instantly. The nice thing is the fluorescent marker that's on the tag polymer is not consumed by the TTPC. So there's some advantages with utilizing the naphthylamide, that's the fluorophore on the tag polymer, versus PTSA.
You mentioned meter before. We all have a PTSA probe somewhere that's measuring PTSA. Can we also have the controller measure the tag polymer?
Yes, but you need a separate probe for that. The instrumentation isn't such today that you have, in essence, a universal probe. At some point, likely that it will come up. It'll be a several phase probe. But today, no, you would have to spend a considerable amount of money to get a separate probe for the fluorescent tag polymer. But having said that, if you're not using the PTSA, then you don't have to buy the PTSA probe.
So you're just feeding off of the polymer demand, not the PTSA.
Correct, right.
Would there be any benefit to having the controller read both?
That's an option I think that some companies would prefer to do. Actually, what we've seen of late is people focusing more on the fluorescent tag polymer than the PTSA. Because again, their viewpoint is I'm looking at real-time polymer demand.
Before we jump back into our discussion, we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. Today, I want to talk to you about a hidden threat lurking in your cooling water systems: biofilm. You know, that slimy stuff that causes all sorts of headaches for us water treaters. But don't worry, because I've got some great news for you. Our friends at AMSA have developed products that are absolute powerhouses when it comes to biofilm control. These aren't your typical products used in biofilm control programs. Oh no, they're much more than that. AMSA's products actually penetrate and break up those stubborn, gluey deposits. This means your biocides can work more effectively and at lower levels too. Plus, it weakens the biofilm matrix, allowing it to be washed away with the flow of water. By incorporating AMSA products into your biofilm control program, you can say goodbye to your concerns about microbiologically influenced corrosion, scale formation, reduced cooling efficiency, and even minimize the risk of Legionella in your systems. So if you want to clean it up and keep it clean, head over to scalinguph2o.com/AMSA to learn more about their innovative biofilm control solutions. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/AMSA. Trust me, your cooling water systems will thank you. Let's jump back in right where we left off. On episode 206, we were talking about blending. Are there any concerns when we're going to change a product that we've got a lot of history on and we're going to change the polymer to a tag polymer? Is it a one-to-one replacement? What do we need to know?
All right, so there's no real difficulties utilizing the fluorescent tag polymers. So whether it's an AMS or a Maillé-based material, it's literally a direct drop-in. So you could replace the non-tag polymer with the fluorescent tag polymer. Depending upon the supplier, you would want to make sure that your activity levels are the same. So if it's 50-50 or 40-40. But outside of that, no, there's nothing special that you have to do. It's actually a quick, easy way of doing it.
Any considerations with shelf life or anything else that we might not be thinking about?
We've seen no issues with that. We are actually manufacturing tag polymer standards for several companies. So we've been able to kind of track that trace over the past couple of years. And we haven't seen any issues with it. In our manufacturing processes, we handle the fluorescent tag polymer in the same way, if you will, that we do PTSA. So we're not going to expose it to extremes of a quat biocide or something that might destroy it or compromise it.
Yeah, I can see as far as QCing a product before it goes out to a customer, you've got a lot more latitude to check a whole nother aspect. How much polymer do I actually have there? And before the tag polymer, we had some polymer tests, but let's admit it, there could have been an improvement on those.
Well, of course. One of the things about methodology is that you're constantly looking at making improvements and doing that. I know we here are doing that literally on a daily basis. To be candid, we do make progress in that. Most of the time, it's not seen when you look at the bottle. It's in the internal chemistry and reaction back and forth. But from a blending QC parameter, the answer is yes. It gives us another analyte to be able to go back and check and verify and make sure that it's done properly.
Gary, I'm sure there's somebody out there that's thinking, finally, I don't need to do all of these different tests in my customer's account. I can just do one test. Is that true?
Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Some companies have jumped on the PTSA bandwagon. It allows them to go in and run a quick test with a fluorometer and really not pay attention to the rest. I understand it cuts down service time. I understand that it's a cost savings, but it's not something that I would support. Now, having said that, if someone were to come to me and say, well, I could do PTSA, I could do tag polymer testing, I would much prefer the tag polymer because I'm looking at the real active ingredient rather than just a third-party tracer that's not really telling me anything. Where when I'm running the fluorescence on the tag polymer, that's telling me how much active polymer residual I have.
Are all tag polymer tests the same? So if you get it from company A or company B or company C, they're all the same thing, or are there different nuances with them?
Our experience has been they're all basically the same, but I don't like to just take that for granted because I'm not sure what some of the other manufacturing procedures are. I am familiar with the procedures that MFG and Radical uses. So my recommendation is when people buy a tag polymer, it takes maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes to do a couple of standards. You can cross check it. You can find the variance nuances. If you would be off, some number, whatever that number means, you're informed. If you're just assuming, I don't know. I also recommend that people do that about once a year, just to make sure that there's been nothing changed in the manufacturing process with the fluorophore on the backbone of the polymer. And we provide that service, that backup for customers every day. So between them and us, it's an easy task to verify that and make sure everything's operationally fine.
One of the jobs of a water treater is to help their customers save energy and water. How does knowing exactly how much polymer you have in the system help with that?
Well, you're dispersing scaling ions, you're dispersing corrosion byproducts. Polymer functionality is key to the success of your program. For too many years now, the marketplace has just taken it for granted. If I put X number of product in, I'm going to have a residual and everything's going to be okay. When the reality is, as you know, polymer demand fluctuates. If I've got a little higher cycles and I got more hardness or iron oxides or sulfates or something else, my polymer demands may go up and down, let alone what might compromise the polymerics in the process or somebody's messed up somewhere along the line.
Obviously, there's specific benefits if you're putting the correct amount all the time. In your experience with looking back where people have just fed polymer off of an equation, same amounts going in all the time, have people used more polymer when they started tracing it or less polymer? Or is there enough data to do that?
I don't have enough data to be categorically making a statement. I would say that the history of the water treatment marketplace is to overfeed everything. And therefore, your costs go up. Sometimes it's not beneficial. You find out that grossly overfeeding a product can clean up a system or bring you other problems. Utilizing the fluorescent tag polymer and the analysis of that begins to level it out, begins to give tools that people can utilize that are cost effective and fairly easy to do that refines their programs.
What is the one thing everybody needs to know about tag polymers?
It's literally a direct drop in. So if I'm using an AMPS polymer and I use the fluorescent tagged AMPS polymer, I can then turn around and put it in my product. I don't have a lot of changes in the formula. There's no difference in the neutralization curves. And that actually gives me an option. For those accounts that I don't want to test for it, I get the same performance. For those accounts where I do want to test for it and control it, I have that option.
Is there any hurdle that you've seen where people have now started using tag polymer that maybe they didn't expect?
No, we haven't seen any negatives out of it. And again, tag polymers are not necessarily new. As you know, there have been companies utilizing this for almost 20 years now. So I don't think that there's a large negative that has occurred. I do think that there are some very good benefits with doing it, as I previously stated.
Gary, if somebody wanted to learn more about if tag polymers are right for their customers and their company, what do you suggest?
I'd be more than happy to talk to them. I would encourage them to contact Mr. Stanish at Radical Polymers as well. There's also a fair amount of information published on the internet. Also, if they choose, talk to their current supplier of polymerics. They're not using MFG Radical and gain as much information as they can. Have a chat.
Well, Gary, I know people have learned a lot listening on how they could utilize tag polymers, and we'll be sure to put your contact information on the show notes page. Before we say goodbye, I want to do round 3 of the lightning round. So you've survived the first 2 rounds. How do you think you're going to do on round 3?
I have no idea, young man.
All right. So everybody out in the Scaling Up Nation can start making their wagers on how Gary's going to do now. I'm going to go ahead and start with question number 1. Gary, if you could create a holiday, what would it celebrate and how would people observe it?
Okay, so I would consolidate some of the holidays and I would make a holiday. I'd take away President's Day and things like that. And I would make a holiday called American Heroes Holiday. And people would celebrate local heroes, timely heroes, historical heroes, people who have meant something to people's lives. It would be a national holiday and I don't know, similar to like 4th of July or something, Trace.
That's a great idea. Hopefully, somebody that does that will hear this episode and maybe look into that. Would you say you have a mantra or a quote that you live by?
I have a mantra that everyone has heard of, okay? And it's the KISS principle, keep it simple, because the more complex things get, the less people will do it. So here at MCI, it's always trying to how do we simplify it? How do we make it easier? And I think that really serves people well when you keep it as simple as possible.
What is the most adventurous thing you've done recently?
Oh, I have actually taken a couple of days vacation. That has been something that has been unique.
All right, I guess we'll go with that.
Yeah, well, what can I tell you?
Gary, what's one thing that you wish more people knew about our industry?
That we're the good guys, that we're actually helping people save water, energy, helping the environment. We're not the polluters. We're not doing all the rest of that. That the industrial water treatment industry is actually part of the good guys. Because too many times people lump you into, well, your chemicals and stuff. So
Yes, so many companies have eliminated the word chemical from their name because of that.
yeah, present company included.
Well, Gary, time number 3 on the podcast. Thanks for coming on again and sharing some of the knowledge that you've gained over your career to help the Scaling Up Nation.
Thank you, Trace. Thank you, Trace. Thank you, Trace.
Scaling Up Nation, we get feedback all the time that you, the Scaling Up Nation, love technical interviews. Well, there you go. My gift to the Scaling Up Nation. That was a great technical interview. Garret Garcia, that is one of the individuals that I wish I could do the Vulcan mind meld on and just learn all the information that he has in his head. Wouldn't that be great if we could just pass around all of our water treatment knowledge that way? I tell you, that's one of the reasons that I started this podcast. This is my own version of the Vulcan mind meld. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that is a Star Trek reference. Yes, I'm that guy. Scaling Up Nation, it is my goal to make it as easy as possible to gather all of this collective information from all of these experts that we interview and allow you to go inside their mind just for an hour and learn some of the things that they've been learning over their career so you can apply it to yours. Nation's one of my favorite things to do each and every week, and I have met some great people because of it. And the reason I get to do that is because there's so many people out there in the Scaling Up Nation that listen to this podcast. But let me tell you, there are not enough. I need your help. I need for you to help me find the next Scaling Up Nation member. So the next time you meet an industrial water treater, be sure part of your conversation is, do you listen to the Scaling Up H2O podcast? And if the answer is yes, ask them another question. Hey, do you know that they are doing discussion guides for each and every episode, making it easier to bring what they're talking about on the podcast into your team, into your company? Maybe they didn't know about that. Or maybe they answered you no. And if they do that, well, you know what to do. Let them know to get out their phone right there, to call up their favorite podcast player and point them to Scaling Up H2O and get them to subscribe right there. In fact, if you're listening and you haven't subscribed, you want to go ahead and do that right now. And then you don't have to go looking for new episodes. And of course, if you listen to this episode on a regular basis, you know you're going to get a new one each and every Friday. But most people just look at their podcast player and say, hey, there's a new symbol right next to this podcast. All I have to do is hit play. So if that sounds like you and you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and take a moment to do that and help us find some new people that can subscribe as well. By the way, if you enjoyed this interview with Gary, he was also on episode 206, where we were talking about blends and product formulations. And then episode 314, when we were talking about the water treatment economy and supply chain issues. So, Nation, thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for all the things that I asked you to do today that I'm sure you have already done or are in the process of doing. And Nation, you better believe that I am working right now to make sure we get that new episode to you next Friday, just like we do each and every Friday. Nation, until then, have a great week, folks. Lift others as you rise. At the Rising Tide Mastermind, we say a rising tide raises all boats. We believe in the power of helping others to achieve their goals. By supporting your peers, you also grow. Join a group where mutual success is the ultimate goal. To find out more, go to scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/mastermind.